This one is a little bit of a chunky boy. There are so many stories in this, and I didn't even fully realize exactly how many until I started reading it. And it's definitely varying in quality and even length of the stories too. There are some that seem to drag on forever and some that just happen so quickly. I was like, oh, but I wanted more of that. So all in all, not too bad of a volume, but I think overall too, it might be one of my least favorites too. I didn't want to end this vlog with negativity. I really don't. But there are some positives in this, and I'm ready to talk about them. The first story is called Biohouse. I gave it a higher rating when I first read it, but when I looked back at all the ratings, I lowered it a little bit. So I gave it a 5 out of 10. Not too bad at all, but it is an odd one. It's about a young woman who goes to this man's house, and he has this really weird buffet laid out for her, and it's really weird food, like crickets and dissected frogs and stuff like that, and she's like, I'm into this kind of thing, and almost like nothing can repulse me. And this man, I would love to know what exactly brought her here. Like, how did they meet? What was the initial conversation? Like, oh, I have this buffet of weird food, come over sometime and you can have as much as you want. Like, what was it that inspired this conversation? I'm just, I have no idea. Coincidentally as well, I think the main girl in this, she looks a little bit like Tomie when she was younger. A little bit anyway. I mean, I know I'm not going to try and connect any like characters because they look alike, because a lot of the times characters do just look alike. But I do find that very interesting. I wonder if there's some kind of like conspiracy that connects this with Tomie. Who knows? But yeah, this man ends up making her drink blood, and it turns out to be his blood, and she is repulsed by it. She can't drink it. She likes snake blood, apparently, but she cannot drink his blood. It repulses her, even though it's like fresh from his veins. And he is like chasing after, oh my god, he stabs himself in the neck and gets all of this blood to squirt out, and like it's going everywhere. And his servants, his maids, they are like licking the blood up, and they're like in ecstasy over this blood. It's so grim. And the maids are almost vampiric as well. They seem to be obsessed with this blood. So she runs away, she goes into this room with loads of weird creatures and stuff, and she manages to sort of kill him and walk away from it. I do like how bizarre it was. It happens out of nowhere. You know, they just have this buffet of really weird food, and then it descends into this. And she's somebody who likes gross food anyway, and again, I just have so many questions. And the visual of him stabbing himself in the neck and the blood squirting everywhere and him dousing people in it, oh, it makes me want to protect my neck again. Like that red turtleneck story where I'm just like, ugh, please, like, leave my neck alone. The next story is Face Thief, and I like the idea behind this. I don't know if I fully love the entire story though, so I gave it a 4.5, which is still, it's an okay rating. But yeah, there is this girl who is seemingly obsessed with this other girl in her class, and it will essentially look like other people if she spends enough time with them. And it's that whole commentary on changing your personality or your appearance based on somebody else. And I like the exploration of that, especially in a school setting when that is so rampant. A lot of people are influenced by each other, you know, whether it's popularity and they just think they're cool, or they just love their appearance. You know, whatever it is, a lot of people do mold themselves to be like other people, which I find fascinating. And this girl, she can literally change her appearance, and she can look like the people she spends time with, and you can see her starting to change. And that is a really interesting concept, but I just don't know if I fully love the entire story though. I don't think it was all that interesting other than just the premise itself. But I do love how the entire classroom and even the teacher managed to stop her by putting on these really ugly masks, and they surround her and they get her to change, and that is like really freaky. So even though I feel like this whole volume itself lacks a little in the gross department, there are definitely times when it comes through and it's very effective. So I really did like the ending of this story, but yeah, 4.5. Then we get to Where the Sandman Lives, and this is a story that I did like, but mainly because of one concept, and I gave it a 6.5 out of 10 for that alone. There is something about this that really does creep me out, and because of that, that's why I'm giving it such a high rating. I feel like there are some things about that's reminiscent to the story where the guy dreams and he sees what the other guy is doing who's killing people, and he starts to believe that he is doing that himself. But it's kind of like that, but like reversed a little bit, which you'll understand in a second what I mean. So this guy gets this girl to make sure he doesn't fall asleep, and when he does, he explains it himself. There is somebody who comes to life like from his dreams essentially, and his body then becomes like, you know when you turn a sweater inside out or something and you pull it through and it's like on the other side. I'm explaining that so badly, but can you say his arm is like caving in and coming out of his mouth? It's like he is literally reversing himself. You know, like when you reverse a dust jacket on a book and it's like the other side, or yeah, you have the sweater and you're putting it inside out and you're pulling it through. That's essentially what's happening to his body. It's so disgusting, and he's trying to like push it through, like it's vile. Like he's pushing it through, getting it so that his arm is coming back through there. The dream world me, his true form is the reverse side of my body. He's been dreaming inside of me, but now he knows about the outside. So like it's really scary when something inside of you is trying to get out, and something that can potentially really hurt you and other people. I feel like that is balanced so well with the really gross visual of him and his own body being like a reversible jacket, a reversible sweater. You'll be completely turned inside out, like, ugh. Vile. It was really scary actually when she, like the girl who's trying to help him, gets pulled into him and she never really manages to come back out. She's forever inside. Like, how do you even come up with that kind of thing? She's gone on a trip to my dream world. It ends on such a sad note really for her when she was just trying to help him. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. The next story is The Devil's Logic, and I really enjoyed this one. I wasn't sure at first because I was like, I don't really know where this is going, because a lot of Junji Ito stories seem to focus heavily on taking your own life. And this is another one where a girl just randomly does that. She jumps off the side of a building for no reason, essentially, that anyone can fathom, because she was so happy an hour ago. But there is like this tape thing that she had with her, and it seems like she's taped what happened before all of this happened, and a boy who sees it picks it up and listens to it, and on the tape he hears a woman, like for some reason like this really large woman who's like taller than her, and she has no idea who she is, approaches this girl and talks about dying. But don't you feel like dying? I was hoping you would die now. Stop right there and listen, I'm serious. And she tells her about the logic of death for like a good 20 minutes or something. And this guy is listening to what happened to her before she took her life, and he assumes that she is the god of death. But through listening to this tape, he himself then starts to feel like he wants to die. So he goes to the same place where she jumped, and ends with him falling. And it's that idea of this almost like a cursed tape, a bit like The Ring, where you watch it and you die 7 days later. It's almost like that in a way that this person heard the conversation between the girl who died and the person who approached her, and he feels the same way of how she ended up feeling through that. So like, will more people listen to this tape? Will people find it? Will it cause them to, want to die? It's just the implications of that are so vast that I gave this one a 7 out of 10. I just thought it was so good, and again, could work as a larger story. This story, The Long Hair in the Attic, is probably my favourite story out of all of them, because it is this dread and horror that came up inside me as I was reading this. So essentially there was this girl, she's in a relationship, and the guy tells her, you should grow your hair out. And she's like, okay. So she grows her hair out, and I mean, there has been like this recurring theme with Junji Ito. There have been a few stories now where hair has been involved, and again, anything to do with the human body, anything that everybody has that could potentially kill them, is such an interesting thing to explore, because it's such a human and almost mundane thing to explore. But yeah, she grows her hair out. One day she wakes up and there's a rat entangled in her hair, and it's so odd. And then randomly one day she's found without her head in her bedroom, and obviously her family are freaking out, like, what the hell's happened? What's happened? And her head's gone. And then I think some time has passed after this. I mean, there are some things about the story that isn't really delved into or explored properly. Like the whole connection with the boyfriend, I don't think really made any kind of sense by the end of it. So I felt like that was a little underdeveloped. But anyway, some time has passed, and her sister and her father end up going into the attic. I don't know why they didn't do this earlier, or why the police didn't, for example. But they go into the attic, and they see her head, and the hair is wrapped around everything in the attic, and it seems to have a life of its own. And this whole sequence was just so blood draining. I felt the blood drain from me seeing this. And just the way her eyes are, the way that the hair is kind of pulling her head and making it move, and it's almost like it has legs like a spider. Yeah, and it just goes away. It runs away. It does have a life of its own, and the unexplainable way that this came about made me like it the most out of this collection. The head moving on its own with the hair, just really, really got under my skin, and I really enjoyed it. The next story is Scripted Love, and this one was another unique premise I enjoyed too. I gave this one a 7 out of 10, and it's about this girl and this guy. This guy, he is a heartbreaker. He gets with women, and he usually dumps them. He gives them a videotape, and he's like, if you ever feel lonely and you need me, watch this videotape. It's like 6 hours long or whatever. And her, in a fit of rage, like stabs him, and she thinks he's dead. And it goes back in time a little bit to a flashback on how they met. He is a script writer, sort of like filmmaker kind of person, I think. And he ends up wanting to break up with her, and that's when she does like stab him. But then she finally watches the tape, and it's of him talking to her, and he's even written a script that she has to reply to this videotape with. And she ends up like really becoming attached to this video version of the person, the boyfriend she's just had, that she's just stabbed. So yeah, all she has to do is say her lines from it, and it's almost like she is conversing with this version of her boyfriend. And it turns out that he isn't actually dead. Like, she didn't actually kill him, and she has a chance now. She has a chance to actually save him or kill him, and she chooses to kill him because she's fallen in love with the video version of him. Like, she even says, after all, the Takahashi I love is over there. And he's like, what? But like, that's just a video. You'll get bored of it soon. And she's like, I won't, not with this wonderful script. And then she gets I think that's just a bottle or something, and smashes him over the head with it. And it's implied that she killed him for real, and she has fallen in love with the videotaped version of him, which is just so bizarro. It's so bizarro, but really, really good. And just so different to a lot of other Junji Ito stories, which at the minute, because I've read so many of them, I do really want to reward that creativity and the uniqueness to the concepts. And that was definitely a unique concept, especially since someone's falling in love with a scripted version of the person they should have loved in real life. It's a bit of a mindfuck. And then we get into the Reanimator Sword, and this one is probably my least favorite of this collection. I gave it a 3 out of 10. It's essentially about this guy who has this sword that can put like hundreds of years worth of souls into someone and bring them back from the dead. And like, someone's grandpa dies, he brings them back from the dead. I really just did not care for this one. I didn't care for it. He brings them to life like this. Like, still great visuals, like amazing, amazing artwork. But I just wasn't intrigued by it at all. This boy does confront him, and it's revealed that he apparently died and he had to be brought back to life, same as his mother and brother, I think, too, like some of his family. And if the boy kills him, then they will also die. Like, everyone who he's brought back will die, including him. But he kills him anyway, and the main character boy is sort of taking over as the reanimator. And again, like, I didn't really care for it all that much. I don't have a lot to say about it. The next story, Father's Love, went on way too long for me. I was flicking through it just like, okay, when is this actually gonna end? Okay, yeah, I feel like it's the longest story in here, and it just wouldn't stop. It wouldn't stop. Essentially, it is about a father to these children, and he is able to go inside their minds and control them almost, and he ends up killing two of his children. And the main part of the story is him trying to control his daughter. And I do think it's a good commentary on like the power that fathers have on their children and the expectations they have, because as soon as they stray from his vision, that's when he decides to take matters into his own hands. So that is quite scary in itself. Like the whole theme of it is a scary thought. But I just honestly, again, did not care for this one. There weren't really any great visuals in it. There wasn't anything that really stood out from it. It was just essentially a dad obsessed with his children and wanting to control them. And yeah, I just, even just flicking through again right now, just nothing, absolutely nothing stands out from it. But still, I gave it a 4 out of 10 because I appreciate the exploration of a father who wants control and the implications of what it means to try and stray from your father's vision. I may lower that at the very end or when I do a ranking of all of the stories put together in a different video. But for now, 4 out of 10, a bit below average for me. The next story is Unendurable Labyrinth. Again, for like a good chunk of this, I wasn't really taken by it. I did love the visuals of being in this forest. There's like shrines. There are these kind of monks that are walking through the forest. And these two kids are lost and they come across their sort of temple and their place of worship, the place where they train and stuff like that. And they want to go home and things, but these monks don't really like let them. They will be lost if they do try to escape. All of that was like fine in theory, but I wasn't invested. But then we get to them actually trying to leave. That's when it kind of gets a bit better. They find a door behind this big statue and they walk into it, and it's almost like an Egyptian tomb. And that can be really terrifying. There are these like mummified monks and they're just like lining the corridors. And then this was when I was like, okay, yeah, I'm really enjoying this now. And that feeling of claustrophobia, being unable to escape, brilliantly depicted through the corridor. I think that's just so brilliant. And then I just absolutely love the ending as well, when one of them says, I can feel the mummy's gazes. Don't be silly, how can mummies be looking? It's all in your head. And then she says, see, take a look. And then you turn the page, oh, and they are looking. They are staring at them. Oh, God, like, I got a really big chill through my spine. Before this, I probably would have given it a 4 out of 10, but I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. But that's mainly just for the last few pages. As soon as they enter that corridor, perfect. The next story is Village of the Siren, and again, I think this is another one where, I mean, I gave it a 6 out of 10, so I did like it. I need to stop saying stuff like this, but I felt like I could have gotten more out of it, but I just don't think it focused entirely on the right things for a good chunk of it. Essentially, there is a guy who moved away from home, and he ends up going back to his childhood village, and things are different, things are weird. There is like this siren that plays on the nighttime, and the people of the village seem to be getting controlled by people, including the main character's mother. And there are reports of child abductions. So there is this really awful moment regarding that, which I will not speak out loud, but you can probably get the gist. And there are like all these sacrifices being made to hopefully like raising the devil. So I did love like being in the village. I loved the weirdness of it, like the siren itself just emitting this awful sound and controlling people is a fabulous idea, honestly. And the not being able to control yourself when you're doing these things to bring this awful creature back. And it had a good ending too, you know, a lot of hell broke loose during it, and it's a lot of chaos, which I love. I love stories where a lot of chaos happens, and it got a little bit unpredictable by the end, and it leaves a lot to be interpreted at the end too. It's just so interesting, and I really enjoyed that. I think overall though, I just didn't love all of the execution of it, but I still really enjoyed my time with it. Then we have Bullied, and I'm a little bit torn on this one because I think like the ending itself is perfect and amazing, but again, like the main chunk of this story, it does lead to the ending, to be fair. Like it does help build it up and stuff, so like I can't fault it for that. But I just think my own interest, it didn't carry all the way through. But essentially we have this young girl, she plays in a playground, And this mother comes up to her with her child and she's like, hey, are you by yourself, young lady? Like, can you look after him? Like, can you play with him? Nobody else plays with him. And she does. She hangs out with him. They play together and stuff. But then she really wants him to leave her alone, so she starts to bully him. And she bullies him, like, really badly, to the point where he does end up getting hurt. And she seems to carry that guilt with her in life. So we see her a bit older and telling her boyfriend at the time what happened when she was younger and the guilt she feels. But then she says she does meet up with the guy who she bullied. Like, he surprises her one day after all these years. They fall in love, they get married, they have a child, and then the guy who was bullied leaves her, and the child looks exactly like him when he was a kid. And so the mother, and this is like really sinister, the mother, she decides then to bully her child, and she does actually see this young boy as the boy she bullied when she was a kid. And so she really changes, and it's a really scary transformation. Like, she goes back to her being the bully when she was a child, so she dresses up how she used to. And like, that is genuinely terrifying when it's your own mother. And she's even leading her child to the playground in the middle of the night so that she can terrorize him. Mothers who abuse their children, which is what she's about to do, it's genuinely upsetting. Like, I was so upset during this. And even just the theme of bullying itself is something that I take to heart. So it's a very heavy and sad story, really, with the elements of the creepy with the bully. So I do really appreciate that. I'll still only give it like a 6 out of 10 because I just don't think it's one of my favorites, but still really decent. And then finally, for this volume, and what the volume is named after, is Deserter. And for the longest time in this one, I was like, I'm a little bit lost. But it is explained that during the war, this guy here, he deserted the war, and he is a deserter, and he's hiding out in this family home. And because of him, one of the daughters there gets killed. Like, it's just the children. There's like the oldest boy, and then his siblings. And one of the siblings gets killed by an American plane in 1945, and it's blamed on the deserter, like by the family. So they decide, while this deserter is hiding, to pretend that it's still, you know, also the time of the war. Even though the war's already ended, they haven't told the deserter that, so they're like terrorizing him with it. So like, he comes down to eat, and that's about it. He goes back to his room, and they have somebody come pretending to be an officer, and, you know, shouting, oh, we spotted the deserter, where is the deserter? And it looks like they're still looking for him after all this time. So the deserter thinks the war's still going on. There's a lot of excess fat to this story that potentially could have been cut, but, you know, I'm not the author. This is all Junji Ito's work. So yeah, they end up deciding, like, when the fireworks are happening, to pretend it's an air raid. So they go into the storeroom where the deserter pretty much lives, and they find him hanging, but he is dead, and he's been dead since 1945. So during, like, I think it's been like 8 years since this. For the last like 8 years, it seems like his ghost has been the one that's been conversing with the family and coming down for the meals. So for the entire 8 years, like, he's been dead. He's been dead. Like, and they're like, wait, hang on, what have we just witnessed? Like, what have we been seeing for the past 8 years? And that is like such a really great twist ending for me. I think it's a really good one. Even though the ending does carry on a little bit after that, that I think just like dragged it out a little bit too much. Like, it could have been more impactful if it just ended after that. So I'm giving this one a 5.5, like that story, a 5.5. Really love the idea of that, and the exploration of the war and the effects it had on people too. In Deserters in general, I thought that was really interesting. So overall, Deserter, the collection, averages out at a 5.63 out of 10. Definitely not one of my favorites. I think it had some strong ones in here, but a lot of mid to weak stories too. But don't worry, I'm still loving my Junji Ito, okay? I'm obsessed with him. I cannot wait to read more of his stuff, even though it seems like I've just been negative the past couple of stories, but not all of them are going to be winners for me.